On a bright Saturday afternoon in the quiet suburban town of Maplewood, 17-year-old Marcus Reynolds walked eagerly toward the gleaming windows of Sterling Jewelers. Today wasn't just any day, it was Marcus's mission to find the perfect birthday gift for his little sister Mia. For months, Marcus had been working extra shifts at the local diner, carefully saving every dollar and tip, determined to give Mia something special that showed his love and appreciation despite their family's challenges. His eyes sparkled with hope as he finally spotted what he had been dreaming of, a delicate silver charm bracelet displayed under the soft glow of the store's elegant lights. Clutching his wallet, Marcus felt the reassuring weight of his hard-earned money, ready to make this meaningful purchase. Yet as he hesitated outside the pristine glass doors, adjusting the hood of his jacket, he couldn't shake off the nagging awareness of how others often viewed young black men like him, sometimes with suspicion, sometimes with unfair judgment. Determined not to let those fears hold him back, Marcus took a deep breath, pushed open the door, and stepped inside. The rich scent of polished wood and faint perfume filled the air, mingling with the quiet murmur of well-dressed customers browsing costly jewelry. Despite curious glances, Marcus's focus remained on the bracelet, his symbol of love for Mia. Unbeknownst to him, this simple act of kindness was about to be overshadowed by prejudice, setting in motion a chain of events that would challenge not only his courage, but the very idea of justice in their community. From the moment Marcus Reynolds stepped inside Sterling Jewelers, the atmosphere shifted. The store, known throughout Maplewood as a place of luxury and refinement, was filled mostly with older, well-dressed women admiring sparkling diamonds and intricate necklaces. The polished wood shelves and velvet-lined display cases gleamed under the bright lights, reflecting the wealth and status that many patrons enjoyed. But for Marcus, the gleaming jewels were more than symbols of opulence. They represented a heartfelt gift for his younger sister Mia, something he had dreamed of giving her for months. Standing behind the counter was Evelyn Parker, a middle-aged white woman whose carefully styled silver hair and sharp eyes scanned the room with practiced scrutiny. At first, her gaze simply passed over Marcus, but as soon as she noticed him approaching, something changed. Her neutral expression tightened, her lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Marcus could feel the unspoken question hanging in the air, a silent but deafening doubt that followed him like a shadow. What is a young black man doing here? Marcus had encountered this look before countless times in stores, restaurants, and public spaces, where he was seen as an outsider simply because of his appearance. It was a weight he carried, an invisible chain that tried to hold him back, but he refused to be deterred. With a polite smile and steady voice, he pointed to the silver charm bracelet he had saved for. "I'd like to see that one, please," he said calmly, echoing the words his mother had always taught him to use when facing suspicion. Evelyn didn't move right away. Instead, she folded her arms, tilting her head slightly, and asked with thinly veiled condescension, "Are you sure that one's quite expensive?" Marcus's stomach tightened, but he kept his composure. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out his wallet and showed her the neatly folded cash, every penny earned from long hours at his job. "I'm sure," he said firmly. "I have the money right here." Rather than relax, Evelyn's eyes flicked to the cash with something close to disdain. Her fingers twitched near the phone on the counter, but she didn't move to retrieve the bracelet. Instead, she let out a low, almost amused scoff and asked sharply, "Where exactly did you get all that money?" Marcus stiffened but remained calm. He explained clearly, "I work at Greenfield Diner. I saved up for this." Evelyn shook her head slightly, her disbelief palpable. "You expect me to believe that?" she muttered, tapping her nails on the counter in impatience. Marcus swallowed the rising anger and replied flatly, "Yes, I do." Evelyn chuckled dryly, as if hearing a joke. "Well, I suppose I should be flattered you thought you could fool me. I've been here a long time, kid. I know when something doesn't add up." Marcus's hands clenched into fists at his sides. This was supposed to be simple, a gift for his sister, but instead it was becoming a humiliating ordeal. He asked again, his patience thinning, "Can I just see the bracelet, please?" With a heavy sigh, Evelyn finally pulled out the velvet tray and placed it on the counter. "Be careful with it," she warned sharply. "It's worth more than what you probably make in a year." Marcus gritted his teeth but said nothing, gently picking up the bracelet. It was perfect, exactly what he had imagined. But then the bracelet slipped from his fingers and fell to the glass counter, clinking softly before bouncing onto the tiled floor. Before Marcus could even react, Evelyn let out a piercing shriek. "Oh my God, I knew it." The sudden accusation sliced through the quiet store like a siren. She jabbed a finger at Marcus, her face twisted with outrage. "You were trying to steal it, weren't you? Thought you could get away with it." Marcus's stomach dropped. "No, I wasn't," he protested, frozen as Evelyn lunged for the phone and frantically dialed the police. "Get the police here now. We've got a thief, a young black male in a hoodie trying to steal from us." The room fell silent but thick with tension. Marcus could feel the judgmental eyes of every customer, the tightening of purses, the shifting postures. His mind screamed for someone to believe him, but he knew deep down no one would nod against her word. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, cutting through the peaceful afternoon. Marcus's pulse pounded. Fear and frustration wrestled inside him. He knew this scenario all too well. He'd seen it on the news and whispered warnings from his mother in every moment where his identity made him suspect. Yet standing there vulnerable, he forced himself to breathe, to stay still. Any sudden movement or word could only make things worse. Minutes after the piercing shriek echoed through Sterling Jewelers, the atmosphere in the store shifted dramatically. Evelyn Parker's frantic call to the police quickly bore fruit as two officers arrived, their uniforms crisp and badges gleaming under the store's bright lights. One was Sergeant Daniel Harris, a tall, imposing man with streaks of gray in his hair that spoke of years on the force. His partner, Officer Kyle Simmons, younger and sharp-eyed, followed closely behind. The tension in the store was palpable. Conversations died mid-sentence and all eyes turned toward Marcus Reynolds, who stood frozen in place. Sergeant Harris didn't waste a moment. With a commanding voice, he ordered Marcus, "Sir, put your hands where I can see them." Marcus's breath hitched. Every instinct screamed at him to run to defend himself, but he forced stillness, remembering his mother's advice to remain calm. "I didn't do anything," Marcus said quietly, his voice steadier than he felt. Evelyn scoffed loudly. "Are you seriously going to argue after I caught you red-handed?" She gestured emphatically toward the bracelet on the floor. "The nerve of you people." The words stung sharply. Marcus flinched but said nothing. Officer Simmons glanced between Marcus, Evelyn, and the bracelet, his expression flickering with doubt, unlike Harris, who was already moving in with handcuffs in hand. "Son, step outside with me," Harris commanded. Marcus's heart pounded fiercely as he obeyed. The air was thick with silent judgment, the kind that felt as heavy as chains. He imagined the headlines he'd read before black teen arrested for attempted theft. He knew the script all too well, how quickly fear and bias could shape a story before the truth even emerged. Despite the rising storm, Marcus held on to one hope: to call his mother. "Call my mother," he demanded firmly. Harris sneered. "Kid, you can make your call at the station." But Marcus's voice did not waver. "Call her now." Evelyn rolled her eyes sarcastically, mocking the idea. "Who is she? Some public defender or activist? What's she going to do? Tell you to scream for justice?" She laughed bitterly. Ignoring the jeers, Marcus reached into his pocket, producing his phone with steady hands. "Mom, I need you at Sterling Jewelers. Now." His voice was calm, deliberate, the sound of someone who knew what was at stake. Minutes dragged like hours. The customers, once curious onlookers, had mostly stepped back, some whispering to one another, others filming on their phones. Evelyn paced impatiently, tapping her foot, while Harris loosened his grip on the handcuffs but did not release them. Officer Simmons checked his watch, visibly uncomfortable. The tension was nearly unbearable. Then the store doors swung open and in strode a woman who immediately commanded the room's attention. Dr. Angela Reynolds. Marcus's mother was the police chief of Maplewood. Her sharp navy suit and confident stride filled the space with an undeniable presence. Her heels clicked authoritatively on the polished floor as she raised her badge. "I'm Chief Angela Reynolds," she announced firmly, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. "And this young man," she said, pointing to Marcus, "is my son." The weight of her words settled over everyone like a thick fog. The silence stretched, broken only by the dawning realization on the officers' faces. Sergeant Harris's posture stiffened. His grip on the handcuffs faltered. Officer Simmons exhaled sharply, his body language shifting to careful calculation. But it was Evelyn who reacted most strongly. The smugness drained from her face, replaced by shock and panic. Her mouth opened and closed several times as if she struggled to find words. "Debbie," she stammered, her voice losing its venom, now edged with desperation. She glanced at Angela Reynolds, then back at Marcus, unable to reconcile the truth with her accusations. Angela fixed her gaze on Harris. "Sergeant, I assume you have a reasonable explanation for why my son is standing here handcuffed without so much as a question." She asked, her tone calm, but charged with authority. Harris shifted uncomfortably. "We received a call about an attempted theft," he said defensively. "We responded accordingly." "And by accordingly, you mean you walked in, saw a young black man, and decided he was guilty?" Angela's voice was steady but biting. Evelyn suddenly found her voice again. "I called because he tried to steal from me," she insisted, pointing at Marcus. He dropped the bracelet and was clearly about to walk off with it. "I stopped him just in time and did what any responsible citizen would do. I called the police." Angela's eyes moved to Marcus for the first time since arriving. He hadn't spoken or moved. His expression was a mixture of exhaustion and restrained anger. Despite being the son of the city's top law enforcement official, he was still being treated like a suspect. Turning back to Harris, Angela demanded, "Did you check the security footage?" Harris hesitated. "We were about to." "No, you weren't," Angela interrupted sharply. "You were about to arrest him without reviewing any evidence or asking any questions. That's not how justice works." Her words hung heavy in the air. Officer Simmons nodded in agreement. "We should check the footage." Reluctantly, Harris gave in. The store manager hurried to the back to retrieve the footage, which was soon playing on a small screen. The video showed every moment Marcus entering the store, speaking politely to Evelyn, handing over his money, and then accidentally dropping the bracelet. No theft, no suspicion, just a young man trying to buy a gift for his sister. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus let out a slow breath as relief washed over him. Evelyn's face paled, her confidence crumbled. Sergeant Harris looked away, the bitter taste of defeat settling in. Angela turned to her son and said softly, "Let's go home." Marcus hesitated, but then followed her out, head held high despite the ordeal. Though justice had been served, the battle against prejudice was far from over. The weight of suspicion and injustice pressed heavily on Marcus Reynolds as he stood in Sterling Jewelers, surrounded by watchful eyes and whispered judgments. Despite the ordeal unfolding around him, Marcus held tight to his composure, remembering his mother's constant advice: stay calm, don't escalate, and keep your dignity. Yet inside, a storm of emotions churned: fear, frustration, and a profound sadness born from the all-too-familiar experience of being mistrusted because of his skin color. When Evelyn Parker, the store clerk, accused him of trying to steal the bracelet he had spent months saving to buy, the words cut deeper than any physical blow. The phrase "you people" spat out with disdain echoed cruelly in Marcus's ears. It wasn't just a baseless accusation. It was a reminder of the prejudice and stereotypes that followed him everywhere, casting him not as a young man with hopes and dreams, but as a suspect from the moment he entered. As the police officers arrived, Marcus felt the room's energy shift again. Conversations ceased, the air thickened, and all eyes fixed on him. Sergeant Daniel Harris commanded Marcus to show his hands, already moving toward him with handcuffs in hand. Marcus's heart pounded fiercely, but he forced himself to remain still, aware that any sudden movement could be misunderstood, possibly escalating the situation beyond control. "I didn't do anything," Marcus said quietly, his voice steadier than he felt. But his words fell on deaf ears. Evelyn's scornful scoff filled the room as she gestured toward the bracelet lying on the floor, insisting she had caught him red-handed. The insult "you people" cut deeply again, reminding Marcus of the painful divide between how he saw himself and how others perceived him. "Officer Kyle Simmons." The younger officer showed signs of hesitation, glancing back and forth between Marcus and Evelyn, doubt flickering in his eyes. Yet Sergeant Harris remained firm, pushing forward with the arrest despite the lack of clear evidence. Caught between fear and resolve, Marcus demanded to call his mother, the one person he trusted above all. "Call my mother now," he insisted, his voice firm despite the tension. Harris sneered at the request, mocking the idea, but Marcus remained undeterred, pulling out his phone with steady hands and dialing the number. Minutes dragged as Marcus waited, the silence oppressive. The customers' whispers swirled around him, some recording on their phones, others simply watching their reactions, a mix of curiosity, discomfort, and judgment. Evelyn paced impatiently, tapping her foot, while Harris tightened his grip on the handcuffs, waiting for the arrival of the person who might change everything. Then the store doors opened, and in walked Dr. Angela Reynolds, Maplewood's police chief and Marcus's mother. Her presence was commanding, her navy suit crisp heels clicking confidently against the tile floor. She held up her badge with authority and announced, "I'm Chief Angela Reynolds, and this young man is my son." The room fell into a heavy silence. The officers' faces shifted, Harris's grip on the handcuffs slackened, and Simmons exhaled sharply. Evelyn's confident demeanor crumbled into shock and desperation as the reality of the situation settled in. Angela confronted Harris, directly questioning why her son was being treated like a criminal without so much as a proper inquiry. Harris muttered about responding to a theft call, but Angela challenged the rush to judgment, highlighting the lack of evidence or review of the security footage. Evelyn tried to defend herself, insisting she acted as a responsible citizen who stopped a thief in the act. But her accusations now rang hollow in the presence of the chief, and the video footage soon confirmed the truth: Marcus was innocent. The footage showed him politely paying for the bracelet and accidentally dropping it, not stealing. As the truth unfolded, the tension in the room broke. Harris looked away, defeated. Evelyn's bravado shattered. She was left speechless. Marcus exhaled deeply, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over him. Despite the vindication, he knew this battle against bias was far from over. Walking out of the store with his mother head held high, Marcus felt the bittersweet weight of justice served, but also the heavy reality that such moments were still too rare. This experience was not just his fight, but part of a larger struggle against prejudice that countless others faced every day. Just when the situation seemed to reach its darkest point for Marcus Reynolds, a figure entered the Sterling Jewelers with the unmistakable aura of authority and strength. Dr. Angela Reynolds, police chief of Maplewood, and Marcus's mother strode confidently into the room. Her presence alone was enough to command silence. The clicking of her heels on the polished tile echoed like a call to attention. Dressed sharply in a navy suit, she held up her badge, making it clear that she was no ordinary visitor. "I'm Chief Angela Reynolds," she declared firmly, "and this young man," she gestured toward Marcus, "is my son." The store seemed to hold its breath. For a long, heavy moment, no one spoke. The weight of her words settled like a thick fog, pressing down on everyone present. Marcus barely dared to breathe, watching as realization dawned on the faces of the officers and the clerk. Sergeant Daniel Harris's grip on the handcuffs faltered, his usual confidence slipping away. Officer Kyle Simmons shifted uneasily, the flicker of doubt in his eyes growing stronger. Evelyn Parker, who had been so quick to condemn Marcus, reacted most dramatically. Her face drained of color, the smirk that had once been etched firmly on her lips vanished completely. Shock, anger, and desperation warred across her expression as she blinked rapidly, as if willing herself to reject the truth. Her voice, once laced with venom, now trembled in disbelief. You're the chief's son," she stammered, barely able to form the words. Angela didn't spare her a glance. Instead, her gaze locked onto Sergeant Harris with steely resolve. "Sergeant, I assume you have a reasonable explanation for why my son is standing here handcuffed without so much as a question asked," she said evenly, but with an undercurrent of warning that brooked no argument. Harris shifted on his feet, jaw tightening. "We received a call about an attempted theft," he muttered defensively. "We responded accordingly." Angela's eyes narrowed. "And by accordingly, you mean you walked in, saw a young black man, and immediately decided he was guilty?" Her voice was calm but charged with undeniable authority. Before Harris could respond, Evelyn interjected, her voice rising in pitch. "I called because he tried to steal from me. He dropped the bracelet and was clearly about to take it. I stopped him just in time and did what any responsible citizen would do. I called the police." Angela's attention shifted briefly to Marcus, who stood silently, his exhaustion and frustration palpable even without words. Despite being the son of the city's highest-ranking law enforcement officer, Marcus was still viewed through the lens of suspicion and bias. Turning back to Harris, Angela demanded, "Did you check the security footage?" Harris hesitated. "We were about to." "No, you weren't," Angela interrupted sharply. "You were about to arrest him without reviewing any evidence or asking a single question. That is not how justice is served." Her words filled the room with a quiet but powerful force. Officer Simmons nodded in agreement, adding cautiously, "We should check the footage." Reluctantly, Harris agreed. The store manager hurried to retrieve the surveillance video, which played shortly on a small screen behind the counter. The footage showed everything clearly: Marcus entering the store, politely speaking to Evelyn, handing over his money, and accidentally dropping the bracelet. There was no theft, no wrongdoing, just a young man trying to buy a gift for his sister. The room was engulfed in silence. Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Evelyn's confident posture crumbled, her face paling as the undeniable truth sank in. Sergeant Harris looked away, the bitter taste of defeat settling heavily. Angela turned to Marcus softly. "Let's go home." For a moment, Marcus hesitated, then followed her, his head held high despite the ordeal. Though justice had prevailed this day, Marcus knew the fight against prejudice was far from over. But with his mother by his side, he felt a renewed strength, a reminder that he was not alone in this battle. As the truth unfolded through the security footage, the tension inside Sterling Jewelers shifted into something heavier, a quiet reckoning. The grainy video played clearly on the small monitor behind the counter, capturing every moment of Marcus Reynolds' visit, his polite greeting to Evelyn Parker, the deliberate exchange of cash, the accidental slip of the bracelet, and most importantly, the absence of any attempt to steal. The footage told a story far different from the one Evelyn had spun in her angry accusations. For a few long seconds, no one spoke. The customers who had earlier cast wary glances at Marcus now lowered their eyes, the weight of silent complicity settling uneasily over the room. Evelyn's once confident expression twisted into disbelief, as if the ground beneath her feet had suddenly given way. Sergeant Daniel Harris shifted uncomfortably, the defeat evident in his tightened jaw and restless movements. Officer Kyle Simmons exhaled deeply, rubbing a hand down his face in a gesture of regret. Chief Angela Reynolds, standing beside her son, took a slow, measured breath before addressing the room with a voice that cut through the silence like a sharpened blade. "So, Sergeant, what happens now?" Her gaze was unwavering, filled with the authority of someone who demanded accountability. Harris hesitated, caught between his instincts and the undeniable truth playing out before him. He finally lowered his hands, unable to find words that could justify his premature actions. Angela then turned her attention to Evelyn, her tone calm but edged with steel. "And you," she said slowly, "are you prepared to explain why you were so certain of guilt without a shred of proof?" Evelyn's lips trembled. She looked from Angela to Marcus, then to the watching customers whose expressions ranged from shock to quiet satisfaction. Her voice faltered, no defenses or justifications coming forth, only the heavy realization that she had overstepped and misjudged. The bravado that had fueled her accusations was now unraveling in the face of cold, undeniable evidence. Angela's knowing nod spoke volumes. "I thought so." Sergeant Harris cleared his throat and straightened his posture, attempting to regain some semblance of professionalism. "Chief, I believe we're done here." Angela arched a brow but said nothing further. Harris's jaw clenched, the tension in the room thickening as he turned and exited, leaving behind the echoes of his defeat. Evelyn, desperate for a way out, opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. The moment had passed, and there was nothing left to salvage. Marcus stood silently, absorbing the wreckage of what had unfolded. Though relief flickered within him, exhaustion weighed heavily on his shoulders. No matter how many times he faced these battles, the war against prejudice seemed never-ending. As he looked at Evelyn one last time, his voice was calm but firm. "I just wanted to buy a bracelet." The words carried the weight of all he had endured. "But I guess I got something more valuable instead." Turning away, Marcus walked toward the door, head held high, while Evelyn remained frozen, watching the power she once wielded crumble before her eyes. Outside, the sunlight spilled warmly over Maplewood, but inside, the storm of injustice had left its mark. Marcus's mother stayed close beside him, her presence steady and unwavering. Though she spoke little, the restrained fury radiating from her was palpable, a quiet promise that this moment would not be the last battle fought. They reached her car in silence, the sharp click of her heels on the pavement, the only sound breaking the heavy stillness. Finally, as they settled into the vehicle, Angela's voice softened. "Are you okay?" she asked, her tone laced with a mixture of concern and exhaustion, the kind that comes from fighting the same battle time and time again. Marcus exhaled slowly, his fingers curling into tight fists as he fought the knot of frustration deep within. "I don't know," he admitted, voice rough. "I feel angry, tired, like none of this really matters. Because tomorrow it'll be someone else in my place, and no one will stop to ask if they're okay." Angela nodded knowingly, gripping. Despite the momentary relief and the clear vindication, Marcus Reynolds felt a heavy weight settle on his chest as he and his mother, Chief Angela Reynolds, stepped out of Sterling Jewelers. The towering glass doors swung shut behind them, sealing off the tense atmosphere that had gripped the store just moments before. To the outside world, everything appeared normal. The sun shone brightly, neighbors went about their day, and cars pulled in and out of parking spots. But for Marcus, the echoes of the confrontation and the sting of prejudice lingered deeply within. He glanced back through the window, catching a glimpse of Evelyn Parker standing stiffly behind the counter. Her face was pale, and her eyes darted nervously between the officers and the store manager, who now looked as though he wished to disappear altogether. The customers, who had earlier cast suspicious glances his way, avoided eye contact as if ashamed to have silently witnessed the injustice unfold. The realization that so many had watched and done nothing gnawed at Marcus. He sighed, running a hand down his face, trying to shake the heavy emotions. "I should feel better," he admitted quietly, his voice heavy with frustration. "Like I proved something. Like I won." Angela studied him for a long moment before her features softened just slightly. "Baby," she said gently, "you shouldn't have had to prove anything in the first place." Those words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He swallowed hard, feeling the lump forming in his throat. For a long while they stood in silence, the weight of everything hanging between them like a dense fog. It was a victory, yes, but one tinged with exhaustion and the bitter knowledge that these battles were far from over. Suddenly, the glass door of Sterling Jewelers swung open once more. Marcus's eyes flicked upward just in time to see Evelyn step outside. Her posture was rigid, her lips pressed tight together as if she were waging an internal war. There was a vulnerability in her stance that hadn't been there before, a sign of the crumbling facade of confidence she had clung to so desperately. Marcus's heartbeat quickened as Evelyn took a tentative step forward, then another. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but then closed it again. Her throat bobbed nervously, her eyes flickering first to Angela and then to Marcus. After what seemed like an eternity, she let out a heavy sigh and shook her head, the expression on her face a mixture of wounded pride and defeat. "Look," Marcus muttered bitterly, "figures." He watched as Evelyn turned away, her pace quickening as if she was trying to outrun the consequences of her own actions. He should have expected it. People like her rarely faced up to what they had done or acknowledged the harm they caused. But it still stung. Behind them, the officers exited the store. Officer Simmons glanced briefly at Marcus and Angela but quickly looked away, his jaw tight and hands flexing nervously. Sergeant Harris, on the other hand, barely glanced their way. He merely nodded stiffly in Angela's direction, a silent acknowledgement of the battle lost before turning and striding toward his squad car. Marcus exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just a fraction. "So that's it," he said quietly. Angela looked at him with a mix of pride and sorrow. "For now," she replied simply. Marcus turned his gaze back toward Sterling Jewelers one last time. Inside, the customers had resumed their browsing as if nothing had happened. No longer witnesses to an injustice, but bystanders to everyday commerce. The stark contrast between the silence inside and the turmoil they had endured was almost surreal. He clenched his jaw and shook his head. "I just wanted to buy a bracelet," he murmured. "But I guess I got something more valuable instead." Angela reached out and squeezed his shoulder gently. "I know, baby," she said softly. As they walked away from the store and toward their car, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over Maplewood's streets. Justice had been served, but the battle was far from over. For Marcus and many others like him, the fight against prejudice and injustice would continue day after day, moment after moment. In the days following the incident at Sterling Jewelers, the ripple effects of the confrontation between Marcus Reynolds and Evelyn Parker spread far beyond the quiet streets of Maplewood. News outlets quickly picked up the story, airing segments that highlighted the wrongful accusation and the larger issue of racial profiling. Social media exploded with outrage and solidarity as thousands voiced their condemnation of the store's actions and the premature judgment by the police officers involved. The incident became a catalyst for conversations on systemic bias and the urgent need for change. Evelyn Parker, the store clerk whose baseless accusations ignited the ordeal, found herself at the center of public backlash. Her name circulated widely, attached to a growing wave of criticism. Internally, Sterling Jewelers placed her on indefinite leave as investigations were launched, though rumors soon surfaced that she had been terminated. The company faced intense pressure to demonstrate accountability and commitment to fair treatment for all customers. Meanwhile, Sergeant Daniel Harris faced scrutiny from within the police department. Body camera footage revealed how quickly he had moved to detain Marcus without thoroughly reviewing evidence or questioning witnesses. An internal investigation was launched to assess whether his actions violated protocols or reflected implicit bias. The department pledged transparency and reform, promising to take the findings seriously. For Marcus, the flood of media attention was a double-edged sword. Scrolling through articles on his phone, he found himself numb to the words that celebrated his innocence and condemned the injustice. Instead of feeling victorious, he was haunted by what might have happened if the circumstances had been slightly different, if his mother hadn't been the police chief, if Officer Simmons hadn't hesitated, or if there had been no surveillance cameras to prove his innocence. These thoughts weighed heavily on Marcus's mind, a reminder of the precariousness of justice when prejudice clouds perception. Yet amid the turmoil, a small moment of joy broke through. His younger sister Mia burst onto the couch, waving the silver charm bracelet excitedly, her smile bright and genuine. "Look what Mom got me," she exclaimed. Marcus's chest tightened. Though his mother had ensured Mia still received her birthday gift, the ordeal at the store had left a mark on him. The thought of returning to that place, of facing Evelyn's accusing gaze again, was too much to bear. He forced a smile and told Mia, "I picked it out." "That's what matters, right?" Mia beamed in response, wrapping her arms around him in a quick hug before dashing off to show their mother the bracelet once more. In that simple exchange, Marcus found a moment of peace, an imperfect ending perhaps, but one filled with love and hope. The story of Marcus Reynolds became more than just an isolated incident. It sparked a movement within Maplewood and beyond, challenging institutions to confront bias and demanding accountability from those in positions of power. For Marcus and his family, it was a reminder that while justice may sometimes come slowly or imperfectly, the fight to uphold dignity and equality must never cease. The aftermath of the incident at Sterling Jewelers lingered heavily on Marcus Reynolds' heart and mind. Though the wrongful accusation had been publicly addressed and justice served, the experience left a deep, raw wound that no news story or public outcry could fully heal. The weight of being seen not as an individual but as a stereotype pressed down on him with relentless force. Sitting quietly in the living room of their family home, Marcus reflected on the events that had unfolded. The memories replayed vividly, the suspicious glances, the accusing words, the cold handcuffs snapping shut around his wrists, despite his innocence. It was a scenario he had feared, one he had been warned about since childhood. His mother, Chief Angela Reynolds, had always told him to be careful, to remain calm, but knowing the risks was far different from living through the pain of unjust suspicion. The phone in his hand buzzed with notifications. News articles, social media posts, videos, all recounting the story that had become a national talking point. Yet Marcus felt disconnected from the acclaim and outrage. Victory was hollow when he considered how easily things could have gone differently if his mother hadn't been who she was, if Officer Simmons hadn't hesitated, or if there had been no surveillance footage to prove the truth. A sudden squeal broke his thoughts as Mia, his little sister, bounded into the room. "Marcus, look what Mom got me," she exclaimed, holding out the silver charm bracelet that had sparked the entire ordeal. The tiny charms caught the light, shimmering with a youthful sparkle that contrasted starkly with the heavy emotions Marcus carried. He smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "You like it?" he asked softly. "Are you kidding?" "It's perfect," Mia beamed. But then she frowned slightly. "I thought you were going to get it." Marcus hesitated, the memory of that day flooding back. The fear of returning to the store, of facing Evelyn Parker's harsh gaze, and the weight of that moment had been too much. He forced a small smile and said, "I picked it out. That's what matters, right?" Mia nodded enthusiastically, wrapping her arms around him in a quick hug before dashing off to show their mother again. In that moment, Marcus realized that while the incident had left scars, it had also brought something more valuable, a renewed sense of resilience and the unbreakable bond of family. It was not a perfect ending. Perhaps there never would be one. But for now, Mia's happiness was enough to carry him through. Outside the walls of their home, the story continued to ripple through the community and beyond. It became a catalyst for important conversations about race justice and the everyday realities faced by people like Marcus. The fight against prejudice and systemic bias was far from over, but voices were rising demanding change. For Marcus Reynolds, the journey ahead was clear. He knew that the path toward true equality was long and fraught with challenges. Yet with his family's support and his own unwavering determination, he was ready to face whatever came next. Because beyond the pain and the struggle lay the hope for a future where everyone could walk into a store without fear, where a simple act of kindness would never again be mistaken for suspicion. The day that began with the hopeful mission of a young man buying a gift for his sister ended as a profound lesson on love, resilience, and the ongoing fight for dignity. Marcus Reynolds walked out of Sterling Jewelers with more than just a silver charm bracelet in his hand. He carried the weight of a battle fought not only in the store, but in the very fabric of society. Throughout the ordeal, Marcus had clutched his wallet tightly, the hard-earned cash, a symbol of his dedication and love for his little sister Mia. That bracelet was meant to be a simple gesture of affection, a token of his unwavering support despite the struggles their family faced. Yet when the bracelet slipped and fell from his fingers, it became a catalyst for suspicion and false accusation, a reminder of the barriers that still exist. As Marcus and his mother, Chief Angela Reynolds, exited the store, the tension inside remained palpable. The heavy glass door swung shut behind them, sealing off the storm of injustice and prejudice that had unfolded. Outside, the afternoon sun cast a warm glow over Maplewood, but Marcus's chest felt tight-knotted with a mixture of frustration and exhaustion that no amount of sunlight could dissolve. His hands clenched into fists, fingers aching from the tight grip they had held since the moment Evelyn Parker had accused him. Beside him, Angela's presence was steady and unwavering, radiating a quiet strength that buoyed him in the face of adversity. They walked in silence toward the car, the sound of Angela's heels clicking sharply against the pavement, the only noise breaking the heavy stillness. Finally, as they reached the vehicle, Angela turned to Marcus with a voice that was calm, yet edged with the weariness of countless battles fought before this one. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, the concern in her tone reaching beyond the authority she wielded as police chief. Marcus stared ahead, his fingers drumming lightly against his jeans as he gathered his thoughts. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice rough and filled with the weight of his emotions. "I feel angry, tired, like none of this really matters. Because tomorrow it'll be someone else in my place and no one will stop to ask if they're okay." Angela inhaled deeply, gripping the steering wheel tighter for a moment before forcing herself to relax. "I know," she murmured. "It's a cycle that keeps repeating. But today we fought back. Today you didn't let them break you." Marcus let out a bitter laugh, the frustration burning behind his eyes. "Didn't I? I stood there listening to that woman talk about me like I was nothing while everyone else just let it happen. And even when she got caught, even when she knew she was wrong, she still couldn't say the words." "How do you fight back against something that deep?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How do you make people see you as a person when they've already decided you're not?" Angela didn't answer immediately. She stared straight ahead, lips pressed together in a tight line. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but unshakable. "By refusing to let them define you. By making sure that no matter what they see when they look at you, they see the truth. By showing them over and over again that they're wrong even when they refuse to admit it." Marcus clenched his jaw, looking out the window. It wasn't enough. It never felt like enough. But maybe it was all they had. The silence stretched between them, heavier and more settled this time. Then Angela reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Marcus frowned as she scrolled through her contacts before pressing a name and lifting the device to her ear. "Who are you calling?" Marcus asked warily. Angela didn't answer right away. She waited, expression unreadable as the line rang. After a pause, she spoke calmly but firmly. "Cynthia, I need a press release prepared immediately." "Yes, regarding Sterling Jewelers," she continued, glancing at Marcus before adding, "I want a full investigation into the call that was made to dispatch, and I want an internal review on Sergeant Harris. I also want a public statement condemning racial profiling and the misuse of emergency services. Make sure the media knows exactly what happened today." Marcus's eyes widened slightly. "You're really going after them?" Angela lowered the phone slightly, giving him a knowing look. "You think I was just going to let this go?" A mixture of relief and disbelief settled in Marcus's chest. He had spent too long watching stories like his unfold, profiling humiliation, false accusations, and then when the truth came out, nothing changed. But this time felt different. This time felt like a fight that wasn't going to end quietly. As they sat together in the car, the tension in Marcus's shoulders eased just a little. "Good," he said softly. Angela returned to her call. "Oh, and Cynthia, make sure Margaret Parker's name is included in the statement. If she thought she could do this without consequences, she was mistaken." Marcus exhaled slowly, glancing down at his hands. Justice wasn't always immediate. It didn't always come neatly wrapped in an apology. Sometimes justice looked like accountability, and this time he wasn't carrying the weight of it alone. In the days following the incident at Sterling Jewelers, the story of Marcus Reynolds and his wrongful accusations spread like wildfire across Maplewood and beyond. News stations featured segments highlighting the blatant injustice Marcus faced, and social media erupted with a chorus of voices condemning racial profiling and calling for accountability. The once quiet suburban town became a focal point in a much larger conversation about bias, justice, and equality. Marcus's name became synonymous with resilience in the face of discrimination. People from all walks of life shared his story, expressing outrage at the prejudice that led to his unjust treatment. The incident ignited a wave of public support not only for Marcus but also for the urgent need to address systemic issues within retail spaces and law enforcement practices. Within Sterling Jewelers, the repercussions were swift. Evelyn Parker, the store clerk whose unfounded accusations had sparked the entire ordeal, was placed on indefinite leave. Whispers soon circulated that she had in fact been terminated, a consequence of the overwhelming public backlash and the company's effort to distance itself from the controversy. The company issued official statements condemning racial profiling and promising to review and improve their policies to prevent future incidents. At the police department, Sergeant Daniel Harris found himself under intense scrutiny. Body camera footage revealing his rapid decision to detain Marcus without adequate evidence or inquiry became a focal point of an internal investigation. Department leaders emphasized transparency and vowed to address any breaches of protocol or implicit bias. This case served as a stark reminder of the importance of due diligence and fairness in law enforcement actions. For Marcus, however, the flood of media attention was a complex experience. While many heralded his innocence and championed his dignity, he remained deeply reflective and somewhat numb to the accolades. Scrolling through news articles on his phone, he couldn't help but think of how precarious his position had been. If his mother, Chief Angela Reynolds, had not been present, or if Officer Kyle Simmons had not shown hesitation, or if surveillance footage had been unavailable, the outcome might have been drastically different. The fragile nature of justice weighed heavily on his mind. Yet amid the turmoil, a tender moment brought a brief reprieve. Marcus's younger sister, Mia, ran into the room with a bright smile, proudly displaying the silver charm bracelet. "Look, Marcus, Mom got this for me," she exclaimed, her excitement filling the room with warmth and light. The bracelet's charm shimmered under the living room lights, a small but powerful symbol of love and hope amidst adversity. Marcus's chest tightened with emotion. Despite the challenges they had faced, his family had ensured that Mia's birthday was still special. Yet the thought of stepping foot in Sterling Jewelers again, confronting Evelyn Parker's accusatory stare, and reliving the heavy weight of that day was overwhelming. For now, he chose to focus on the joy Mia found in the gift. "I picked it out," he said softly, forcing a smile. "That's what matters, right?" Mia beamed, wrapping her arms around him before darting off to show their mother the bracelet once more. In that simple moment, Marcus found solace, a reminder that even in the darkest times, love and family could provide light. The incident involving Marcus Reynolds had become more than a personal ordeal. It ignited a broader movement within the community. It compelled institutions to confront uncomfortable truths and propelled conversations about racial bias into the spotlight. For Marcus and his family, it was clear that the fight for justice and equality was ongoing, but with each voice raised and each step taken, change felt a little closer. Marcus Reynolds' simple act of buying a birthday gift for his little sister turned into a profound journey through injustice, courage, and love. Despite saving every hard-earned dollar and approaching the jewelry store with hope, Marcus faced suspicion and false accusations that could have shattered his spirit. Yet through calmness and the unwavering support of his mother, Police Chief Angela Reynolds, the truth prevailed. This story reminds us how deep prejudice can cut, but also how resilience, dignity, and family strength can light the darkest moments. Marcus didn't just buy a bracelet that day, he claimed his right to be seen and respected for who he truly is. Life lesson. In life, we often face moments where we are judged unfairly or misunderstood because of factors beyond our control. The true test is not in avoiding these challenges, but in how we respond, choosing courage over fear, kindness over anger, and hope over despair. Marcus's story teaches us the power of standing tall with dignity, even when the world doubts us, and the importance of having loved ones who believe in us fiercely. No matter how heavy the burden, your truth and your heart are worth fighting for. If this touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to stand strong against unfair judgment? Let's support each other by sharing stories of courage and hope. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our community where every voice matters and every story inspires. Together, we can make the world a kinder place.